I am here with Emily Perez. Emily, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's great to be here, John.
Well, the reason I wanted to have you on is we were having a discussion recently, and we're kind of both on the same path recently. As I'm doing my book for speakers, I'm really taking the stance that we really have a birthright to sing, and that our first communications, they believe, were basically this emotional music language. And you are on the same path, and you really feel that singing is a human right. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a little bit about my personal story, and I think that will help you understand how I got to where I am now. So I trained as a classical pianist as a child, but I really, really loved to sing. But I wasn't, unlike piano, I wasn't particularly naturally talented at it. And so everyone I knew, and this is no criticism of them, praised me effusively for my piano skills and was kind of like, listen to you sing in this way that kind of moved me out of that. And after that, every time I had a choice, I always moved towards piano. Well, cut to my mid-30s, and I'm kind of having what I like to call a premature, precocious midlife crisis. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, what have I always wanted to do that I haven't done that I should make happen for myself? And I thought, you really loved singing. You loved it so much when you were little. And I enrolled in a community college class for voice. It was a group singing class. And I improved so dramatically. And it was the first time in my life that it occurred to me, oh, this is a skill you can get better at. It's not a talent that some people get and other people don't. This is a skill. And you would think I would understand that as I had trained as a musician. But for some reason, I put singing, and I think many people do, in a different category. There are people who are naturally skilled at it, and then there's people that aren't. And so once I figured that out, I just remembered how much I always wanted to sing and always enjoyed it. And I thought of so many people who love to sing and feel that they can't. And it just kind of lit this fire inside me to explore singing and why we sing and whether it should be really reserved for only people who happen to be naturally talented at it, essentially since the time they're small children. So I just think I've benefited so much in my life from singing. It's a gift that I'm really excited about sharing with other people. And I think it has so much utility for us apart from its aesthetic qualities. So I'm just really excited about that. I do think it's a human birthright, and it's our built-in communication system for each other. That popular phrase, when words fail, music takes off. And I think that's so true about singing.
I find, even when I do YouTube videos, and let's say I'm doing a reaction to a singer, people will just want to jump in the comments. They never took a lesson. They never took a lesson. They don't need people like you. And it's almost like, if someone doesn't study singing, they're exalted, right? That no one says this about piano. No one says this about guitar. But voice, we feel that if you're not doing it naturally, it's somehow tainted.
Yeah. We have a kind of a strange dichotomy where we want people to work really hard, but we also want everything to be effortless for them. And it's kind of in comparison with each other, or in conflict, I guess I should say, with each other, and I don't understand it. People laud you if you're naturally good at something, but then they'll also get mad at you if you're not working at something. So you're somehow supposed to work really hard, but effortlessly be naturally talented at things.
Well, singing, it brings so many things to your life besides a shot at a professional career. And what I love is you're really dedicated, even though you work with professional singers, to showing the average person the benefits that singing can bring to their life. Maybe tell us about those.
Yeah. So when I think about singing, I think of it similar to the way that people talk about walking. It's a health tool that's widely available and good for us and part of the natural function of a human body. So when I think about singing, there's so much more than just the aesthetics of singing. Singing is widely used in religious worship. It's used in our human rituals like happy birthday at the office. I had a student, she was in probably her late 50s or early 60s, and she came to me, and her goal was to be able to sing happy birthday during office birthday parties and not feel embarrassed or ashamed. She wanted to connect with the people around her. And, I asked her, I said, okay, so when you're singing in the shower, she said, I don't sing in the shower. And I said, okay, well, when you're by yourself, and she said, I don't sing, Emily. When I was 3, someone told me you shouldn't do that. And she hadn't. And she was, moving into her 60s or late 50s at this point. And she hadn't sung at all because someone had discouraged her when she was young, because this pervasive idea that you shouldn't do this if you're not naturally good at it is just running rampant. So I think of it that way. No one says, if you're not instantly good at walking, no one says you shouldn't do that anymore. It has a utility for us. It's the utility of connecting with ourselves and connecting with the people around us. And in some ways, connecting with nature, like our own human nature.
It is. And I think the vibrations that we create in our body are so soothing when we sing. And 100 years ago or so, middle-class homes in the U.S. and Europe, most of them had pianos. I think there was 1,000 piano companies in the U.S. And now everybody's got these old uprights that were handed down to them, and they're essentially worthless. But it was the entertainment center. And once radio and the phonograph showed up, suddenly it was no, we can have world-class singers on demand, so we no longer sing. And I say to people, yeah, but Tiger Woods didn't stop people from playing golf. He actually brought people to the game. Why is it that singing does this to people? When you learn guitar, there's no shame if you can't move from a G chord to a C chord right away. But in our voice, if we can't match pitch right away, or our tone is not pleasing right away, there's just shame.
Yeah, I think it's really an interesting part of how we view voices, is an interesting part of the negative ways we view our human bodies. I think oftentimes we don't see them as something human, as something to be enjoyed. Many times as a society, we see bodies as something to work, as something to dominate, as something to control, instead of as part of our humanity. And I think some of that goes towards this split that a lot of us unconsciously inhabit between the brain, which is the thinking part of our body, and then the human, corporal, physical part of our body. And a lot of times, I think when it comes to classical instruments, we see that outside ourselves. But when you're talking about the voice, you're talking about your human body. That's the instrument. And I think that's partly why we judge it so much more harshly, and we take in those habits that we have about the other ways we treat our body or mistreat our bodies, and we apply them. I think that's the other reason people are often kind of projecting their negative feelings out to other people. So I think a lot of times and I'm sure you get this too, you get students who they haven't sung at all as adults because someone told them they were bad at it when they were quite little. And I think it's crazy, this idea that adults run around doing this. It really upsets me, honestly. But it's hard for me to imagine someone saying, you're terrible at walking, you shouldn't do that anymore. Or you're terrible at jumping. What a bad jumper you are, 5-year-old. You should just give up now. But that's essentially what we do with singing. And I think it's a lot of people kind of projecting their own ideas and insecurities and neuroses about bodies and about their own skills and talents onto young people. And it's really sad, I think. And that's why I have, I guess, a lot of energy about this.
I think one of the tragedies is a number of voices that think they can't sing because they find it harder to sing. It's because these voices are actually special. And if they learn to work this instrument, it's a glorious, huge, rich instrument. Many times the bigger voices and the more impressive instruments are harder to train. And these voices are lost to us because they're shamed into not pursuing this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I only work with adults, so I've seen this a lot in adults, and they change their minds when they get into their 50s or 60s. They're like, I don't care what people think about me anymore. And then they come in, and some of them have glorious voices that they have to spend catch-up time learning how to control because they were deprived of that as a child by other people's negative comments. And some of them, I mean, I have some students with incredible voices, and you can hear it come out. I'm like, man, if you had been given proper attention when you were much younger, by now you could be, you know, an Etta James. You have these lovely, rich, heavy voices, but they were just discouraged too early. And I totally agree with you. Sometimes I see with people with the most potential are the ones who have been most discouraged.
I agree. I've had people come and they come to singing later in their life, and it's said that self-consciousness, I think, starts around 9 or 10. And then, yeah, thankfully we begin to lose it again, but it takes us another 40, 50 years. But you realize some of these voices, you could have had a career.
Yeah.
Like you have a serious instrument, and when you tell them this, they just look at you stunned. But I never lie to students. I'm not going to tell them something I don't believe, but it's really true, and they've missed out on all these years. Not that everyone should have a music career, right? I mean, that's a tough path. But the option would have been there for them, and they really could have enjoyed singing at a high level. Now, I know that you really reach out to people in the community, and that you have a large choir that you direct. What are some of the benefits that you see people gain from when they first come into your choir versus, say, 12 months later?
Oh, absolutely. So I founded a choir with a friend of mine. She's the artistic director and I'm the managing director. And this is a non-audition choir, and we run it in like 10-week cycles. And the reason I'm talking about this part of how we form it is we're very intentional to try to make it as easy as possible to join this choir, right? Because like most choirs require you to read music. You have to sign up for a year of it. Choir directors are infamously strict about attendance. And basically, we don't do any of those things. We assume that if they're not ready for the concert, they won't show up to be in it. And we provide supports all along the way. So we have people who, you know, are terrified to sing, people who haven't sung since high school, people who've never sung at all, and some people who are like, could be professional level singers, and they're all singing together. And oftentimes I see them come in and they're very nervous and they're very scared. And as the concert gets closer, they get even more anxious and scared. And then at the dress rehearsal, when they sing for the first time on the stage with a live band, I see their faces change, like, oh my God, I'm singing. I'm a performer now. I'm doing it with a group of people. Because the thing about choir is singing together with other people, it makes you sing better. So it makes everybody sing better. Each person adding something creates something magical into the mix. And the bigger the choir is, the more you feel that. You're taking your voice and you're amplifying it by the 30 people around you. And you're getting to do things that you might not have the skill to do by yourself. So I think it's pretty magical. And we definitely have people who came in with tons of problems with pitch matching who've improved with that dramatically over time. People who had never sung publicly ever, who've done solos. It's pretty incredible. And they also have started to create their own little friendships within the group, which is fun to see too.
And these end up being peak life experiences. When somebody who hasn't sung before or denied themselves that, and then they give themselves this gift, and then they can perform, communicate, and share this gift with others, it really becomes the memories that stand out when they look back at their life. And this gift is relatively inexpensive. You don't have to get on a plane and fly somewhere. It's right. You're not navigating the Nile River or trying to climb Everest. You can have these amazing experiences that are just there for you. And I love what you're doing, because you're getting people over the fear. And once they're over the fear, there's just a beautiful world that awaits them.
Yeah, I mean, there was a woman, she joined the choir and she wrote me beforehand. She said, for my whole life, it's been on my bucket list to sing in a choir. And this is the year I'm going to do it. I'm so excited. And she loved it. And then there's other people who've been in a choir before, and the choir becomes a sort of self-care habit for themselves. I remember one of the first members, she's a mother, and she had a young child who had a pretty high needs disability, and then her child also got cancer. So we're talking like an extremely high stress situation as a caretaker. And she said, I just love coming to choir because I can just concentrate and be with people, but I also don't have to be on in the sense that I have to socialize or talk about how hard my day is or think about how hard my day was. And then we had another choir member. Both of them are actually still in the choir now. And she's an immigration lawyer, and she did pro bono immigration work. And she said, Emily, once a week I do intake, and I spend the day listening to horrifically tragic, sad stories. And I know that I can only pick maybe 5 out of those 30 people to represent in court. And she said, it's really heartbreaking for me. And she said, I plan my intake day on the day I know I have choir practice so that at the end of the day, I can go do something that will feel good for me and help me kind of shake off that experience so I can go back to work the next day and do something good. And it's that kind of stuff that really shows how powerful singing is to help us through the hard things of life. Because for both of these women, for one, it was her job, and for another, it was her child. These were really difficult things, and they weren't things that were going to end, anytime soon. It was their chosen career and her child. So it really, for me, I think sometimes people think of the arts as frivolous, and I don't. I think I don't take singing seriously. I'm not self-serious about singing, but I think that the arts they're very important.
They're terribly important. And you've been really looking into an area where singing can bring really amazing benefits, and that's the area of stress and stress reduction.
Absolutely. So during the pandemic, I was hyper stressed, like, 125% of people. And I read this book called Burnout by Amelia and Emily Nagoski. They're sisters. And one of the sisters is a conductor. She has a PhD in music. And this book is about the cycle of burnout, chronic stress that kind of wears you to the point where you're, just like not functioning. And, I think a lot of us experience that maybe for the first time in the pandemic, maybe for the 200th time, depending on what your life is like. And as I'm reading through this book, I'm like, yes, I understand this feeling. And there was a list of things that science shows helps you manage stress. And one of them is breathing out longer than you breathe in. Another one is connecting to yourself through creative acts. Another one is connecting to other people through creative acts. Well, guess what? Singing does 3 of those things quite well.
Yeah.
All wrapped up into one neat package. And the connecting to other people, I think the thing that's unique about singing is you don't actually even have to be with other people to feel connected to other people through singing. You're connecting to music. You're connecting to someone's musical intention. You're with the composer when you sing a song. A choir, of course, is like, ideal way to do all 3 of those things at once. But even if you're doing just one of them, singing by yourself, breathing out longer than you breathe in, it's restful for your nervous system. And I think singing is kind of underrated and not talked about very much as a way to manage daily stress, the way we talk about walking or meditating. And the thing I love about singing is not only is it creative, but it can be light. It can be fun. And the other thing I just love about singing is a lot of the ways that our bodies are designed to manage stress require you to be able to walk and move physically. And for different reasons, many of us can't walk or move physically. Some people can't walk. Some people don't live in a place that's safe to be going outside and doing physical activity. Some people have highly physical jobs. So the last thing they want to do when they come home at night is, go on a walk. And some people don't have legs at work, or they have chronic diseases that prevent them from doing that. But most people have access to singing, or I should say a wider variety. And the great thing about singing is it's something that can stay with you into your later years. Whereas you're not going to be able to continue being a champion runner, into your 90s, probably. I feel like...
Tell us about your online program that you have for singing and stress.
Yeah, so the big project I'm really excited about right now is I received a grant from the city of Sacramento, where I live, and the funding came through the National Endowment for the Arts, which was exciting for me because I got to put that on my resume. And the funding specifically is to make an online class about the connection between stress management and singing, and to help people go through a process of setting up, let's say, a ritual or a plan for themselves for how to integrate it into their lives. So I made this online class. It kind of goes over a little bit of what we're talking about in this podcast about why singing is so good for stress management. And then it kind of helps you develop piece by piece a plan that helps you integrate singing into your everyday life for stress management. And I have it online now for people to take for free to test it out.
And where can people find out more about you as well as this course?
People can find out more about me and get a link to the course at my website, which is macondomusic916.com. And I'll spell that because I know it's long and wordy. It's MACONDO music916.com.
Great. Emily, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's so good to talk to you, John.